In 1998, Osama bin Laden declared war on the United States and set about trying to provoke a clash that would pit the Islamic world against the West. In 2001, he finally got his wish.
This crusade, this war on terrorism, is going to take a while.
Aware that some might see the war on terror as a war on Islam or even a crusade, George Bush went out of his way to bridge the cultural gap.
The face of terror is not the true faith of Islam. That's not what Islam is all about. Islam is peace. These terrorists don't represent peace. They represent evil and war.
We may have wished in the West not to depict it as a clash of civilizations, and we may very sincerely have not seen it as such, but from the start, bin Laden always certainly conceived it as such, and I believe saw it as such.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
And this evening, we welcomed the distinguished interim leader of a liberated Afghanistan, Chairman Hamid Karzai.
Now, there were people in the administration who were euphoric about Afghanistan. There was this euphoria about, we have won. We've won, and Afghanistan is going to be a Jeffersonian democracy in a decade.
Many in Washington failed to understand that in spite of the apparently easy victory in Afghanistan in 2001, the Islamic world was becoming increasingly disaffected. In the aftermath of 9/11, it wasn't only Osama bin Laden who believed that a clash of civilizations was inevitable.
I will not wait on events while dangers gather. I will not stand by as peril draws closer and closer.
There are those who are strongly planted in this ideological camp that this is an existential struggle.
The United States of America will not permit the world's most dangerous regimes to threaten us with the world's most destructive weapons.
They want to put this in religious terms. They want to put this in civilizational terms. And I think they got the idea from Huntington's Clash of Civilizations.
The war on terror began to spread.
What we have found in Afghanistan confirms that far from ending there, our war against terror is only beginning.
After 9/11, they had an opportunity that was unparalleled. They had an open door to do pretty much anything they wanted to in the Middle East.
Immediately after the Taliban was overthrown, eyes turned to other potential threats. One, in particular, sprang to mind. Rumors of the change in policy had been circulating since 9/11.
There was more than whispers. There was, make sure this is not Iraq, search your records over and over again.
What happened was that people began to say Iraq and al-Qaeda had connections.
We do have solid evidence of the presence in Iraq of al-Qaeda members, including some that have been in Baghdad.
Most of us dismiss this as just, the kind of rumor that always happens when you have an event like this. It was the Israelis who really did it.
We have credible evidence that al-Qaeda leaders have sought contacts in Iraq who could help them acquire weapons of mass destruction.
It was a nonsense from the start, but it was very clear within, I would say, 120 days that the neocons were going to use it as the pivot to go into Iraq.
Saddam Hussein is harboring terrorists and the instruments of terror, the instruments of mass death and destruction, and he cannot be trusted.
I'm then starting to think seriously about, wow, are we going to war in Iraq?
At this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
Americans invading another Islamic country. Christians in the heart of the Muslim world. It all sounded eerily familiar.
Laden's assessment from 1998 and the declaration of war had been proven correct, that the United States and its allies in the West and elsewhere were now invading Muslim lands.
It was the greatest pleasure in bin Laden's life when Bush administration sent their troops to occupy Iraq. It was the revival of Al-Qaeda. It was actually the rebirth of Al-Qaeda.
Iraq convinced people across the Muslim world that the only way to settle this is with a defensive jihad, which of course from the beginning was bin Laden's goal.
Like Afghanistan, Operation Iraqi Freedom went according to plan. Until suddenly, it didn't. In March 2004, Iraqi insurgents killed 4 US contractors in Fallujah, set their bodies ablaze, and hoisted them over the Euphrates River.
Yesterday's events in Fallujah are a dramatic example of the ongoing struggle between human dignity and barbarism. Their deaths will not go unpunished.
5 days later, the United States launched Operation Vigilant Resolve and set about eliminating insurgents throughout the city. Iraqis fought back. The violence spiraled. When the Americans invaded Iraq, Fallujah was one of the most peaceful areas of the country. Within a year, it was the most dangerous of all. The cost? Incalculable. The United States entered Iraq to eliminate weapons of mass destruction. There were none. The United States promised to bring peace and freedom. Instead, the country descended into civil war. For Al-Qaeda, Operation Iraqi Freedom was a triumph. Everything bin Laden had said was true. Here, finally, was the clash he had promised.
Al-Qaeda looked at it from manna from heaven. That precisely when Al-Qaeda was on the ropes, precisely when it was at a particularly weakened state,
Bin Laden called to turn them to Allah, to fight the jihad.
the United States shifted its attention and shifted all of its resources away from South Asia and towards Iraq. So it gave them precisely the breathing space that it needed at a critical juncture. Al-Qaeda got the ability to continue to prosecute and continue to carry on this struggle.
The distraction also allowed the situation in Afghanistan to deteriorate.
We declared Afghanistan an economy of force theater, which means as little effort as possible while you maximize your effort in another theater. We took our eye off the ball in Afghanistan.
They thought it would be a picnic, and it would be an easy job. And they discovered that it's not an easy job at all. And they paid a very heavy price for that.
The best way to go after a superpower like the United States is to draw them into an endless struggle in a faraway periphery of empire, if you will, and to bleed them, and to bleed them and bleed them and bleed them. Pretty good strategy.
And exactly the strategy that bin Laden had laid out nearly a decade earlier. Fighting insurgencies on 2 separate fronts, the United States was overstretched, giving Al-Qaeda the opportunity to export the clash to the capital cities of Europe.